And welcome to Marc's Noon Show. So glad you're with me today. It's been a minute, and I'm excited because this guest is a super successful author, and he really is talking about something that's very important to me: caregiving. As we get older, as our parents get older, family members get older, we start to have to deal with how to take care of them. And if you've ever had to do it, it's quite a challenge. And I considered my next guest to be an expert. It's author Reginald Lawson. Reginald, Reggie, join it. Welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Thank you, Marc. I am well. And how about yourself?
I'm great. Reginald is the author of At Home with Dementia, Insightful Caregiver Strategies for Smarter Decisions, Safer Outcomes, and Improved Sanity. Man, Reginald, all those things are things that, again, we talked about off air, you never think about until you have to think about them. And man,
True.
it's a long title, but it's perfect. So tell us about your book and tell us about yourself, Reginald.
In terms of the book, it is an attempt to help those who are going to be on that journey of caregiving. In my particular case, it was caring for my mother who had suffered with dementia, but any caregiver. And the intent of the book is to say, here's my 4 years of trial and error, some things I found that work. And I like for it to be your starting point if you're just starting on the journey. Sort of, you're going to take a road trip. Here's some of the things you need to pack into your vehicle as you head out, as opposed to you're on the road and you have no idea. So that's the intent of the book. And the book is written to and for the caregiver. So much is written about the care receiver, but the caregiver being on that journey also goes through a lot of drama and suffering. And unfortunately, they don't realize it until the end. In terms of myself, I like to think that I have been in service ever since I've been small. Me and my mother, we go back to she had me when she was 15, and she's the baby of her family, and so we've always been fighting for recognition and fighting for acceptance. And I've realized that each occupation I've had has been about service. Occupation as a director of an after-school program, occupation as far as being a Maryland State Trooper, occupation as far as being an insurance salesman, as being a computer programmer, as being a consultant helping out businesses and executives, to now I have my own company called SBG, Strategic Business Group, which is centered around four core services. So if you want to say, tell us something about you, I am a servant. I'm a humble and appreciative servant. And that's what brings me back to this book, to try to serve all caregivers, but in particular the male caregivers, because we don't have the same challenges, if you will, as the ladies. They seem to be more geared and nurtured towards giving, whereas we tend to be a little bit more hands off and trusting of them to do the giving. But when it comes to something like cognitive illness, no way. It does not discriminate. It doesn't care who you are or what you are. So there you go, Marc. That's me.
It's amazing. And so, Reginald, first of all, I didn't know all that. Amazing. What a background. And it speaks to, like a person like you being a state trooper, being in law enforcement. I think, in my opinion, and maybe it's our generation, Reginald, that's what that's what we wanted out of our officers. People who
Hmm.
were called to serve,
Hmm.
to help. Basically to be the voice of reason in an argument, to be there when somebody's in need. And so your background, man, is amazing. And I thought it also was interesting. You said your whole life, because I too was raised. You didn't mention your father, but I was raised by a single mother, and the certain bond that you have. And also, I was raised around older people, so
Hmm. Yes.
that
Yes.
piece where you have to help out, or when like my Aunt Mary and Uncle Earl, they're at an age where they needed some assistance, and I was very young. It's a different. I think it's a certain mindset, like you said, it's a service mindset, and also I think for whatever reason, the generations back then, like my Aunt Mary was the elder who went around to all the other elders who needed stuff at the store, or needed to go to the doctor, or needed a ride to church. It was a part of your civic duty, and also just being a friend, being a family member. That's what you did, right? I think nowadays we're kind of more distant from it. So the part that's crazy is when you have to become a caregiver. I think for a lot of people, it's a shock. it's a shock in the system. Reginald, I'm gonna assume, and I know you did back in the day when we grew up. You had to do pop calls and go see people. You had to go check on Miss So and So. You know,
Yes,
and in
yes.
the holiday season, oh, you
Hmm.
wasn't going to just sit in the house. You had to go around and do the thing. And right, and so it was like it was much more of a community. And
Absolutely.
so for those of us who were raised like that, we understand the challenges, but it's not quite a shock as it is for those people who never had that. Because if I'm
Correct.
honest, like my kids, they didn't have that. The good news is they witnessed me be a caregiver, but
Hmm.
as far as pop calls and seeing Miss So and So and having that relationship, even with the family, if I'm honest, it's just not the same. You know, we knew our cousins, we knew our great aunts, we knew our so and so. It's a different world. So when you talk about caregiving, and all that it takes is almost like 0 to 100. So, Reginald,
Yes.
is that, are you seeing that? You mentioned the men, but just in general, is it almost because of that disconnect we have, even make it tougher when you talk about caregiving for families?
Well, I'm going to say partially yes, and you bring up a good point in terms of how we were orientated towards paying attention and being a part of something greater than ourselves. Where some of these generations, it is about them, so it's the reverse. It's the
Right.
reverse. I believe the statistics say that our women of color, are disproportionately starting to be sufferers of cognitive illness. Dementia is what we call an umbrella statement. And in the subsets or the prongs, people know Alzheimer's. That's a subset of dementia. But there
Mm.
are other forms of cognitive illness. And so what we're finding is that as our women are suffering it, our men are there on the front lines. And that sometimes that means, as you were saying, it might be the son because the father is gone, or the son is the only male in that household. Um, a lot of times, and in my case, as mentioned in the book, I have siblings and family who were within 10, 15, 20 minutes of my mother. She's in Delaware. I'm down here in the DMV. I'm 2 hours away, but I can't get them to go over there to take her to a doctor's appointment or maybe to give her her meds. It took me a good part of 2 years to realize I need to stop being angry with them, because the enlightenment was they couldn't handle it like I could. There was something given to me as a servant, I guess, that allowed me to absorb it, or see it through a different lens than what they did. And so when I stopped being mad at them and understood that, and understood something gave me the capacity to come back home 1 o'clock in the morning and make it, having spent time with my mother to make sure she goes to bed, it just seems that it was almost set up. And I remember saying towards the end to my mother, I get it. God must have gave me to you because he knew you were going to need me in this stage in your life. Now, I say that with all humility. I really do. But for us to come up in an age where we saw it, and we didn't even call it service, that's just how life was. We were involved, we were givers, we shared, we didn't look down our nose, we weren't comparing who had what kind of house or anything. It was just community love, like you said. So I think that's our plus and our blessing. And shame on us for not enforcing that in our kids, trying to give them a better life, making it easier. But we realize now we didn't do them that much favor. We really
That's
didn't.
true. And what you just said, Reginald, I think is so important. You have to get over the bitterness and forgive your
Hmm.
family members, your brothers, your sisters, because Reginald, I think that's a common theme. I noticed. When we initially talked, I told you that was my, one of my shticks. I always talk about it. I said you can have. I'm an only child, but I said you can have 10 brothers and sisters, but usually only one and a half will
Yes.
be around to help with parents. And it's a weird dynamic, Reginald. And like you said, it just is. You can't explain it. And family member is so weird. Like you said, just to get them to go over the house, it's just it becomes crazy. And I
Yes.
think it makes you first. You're just really mad
Hmm. Yeah. There you go.
because you don't understand. You're like, dude, I just need you to go check in. And the way they do it, it's like almost a sheepish uh, denial. And these are people who are usually professionals. It ranges from everybody:
Yes.
church going, professional, responsible. But when it comes down to mom and dad or whatever, it's like they become ghosts.
Yes.
And like you said, and there comes a point when instead of just cussing them out, getting mad, and whatever. You just have to say, because that's the other thing, Reginald, that caregivers have to do is it has to get done.
Yes,
So you can be mad. You can be mad all you want. You
correct.
could be mad all you want 2 hours away, but at the end of the day, you had to get in that car and go take care of mom.
That's there you go.
And
There
it's
you go.
like there's no, and when you're a caregiver, there's no way out. My father-in-law was, colostomy bag, and
Mm,
he couldn't move. So
mm-hmm.
it was and then the other part that you kind of develop is just a certain patience with them. And so, Reginald, talk about that piece, because we talked about it off the air, especially with dementia.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first principles you talked about was, hey, that person that you knew before is not there. Quit
Correct.
arguing, quit fighting, quit,
Correct.
you get into this kind of loop. People kind of are fighting and arguing with someone who doesn't even maybe even know what's going on.
And I think that's probably the most sobering and helpful point to make is that person, and for a certain part of the journey, they're aware of it. My mother said, am I cracking up or am I losing my mind? And the
Mm,
truth is yes, but you don't tell them that. But you as a caregiver, you're witness to it. You know it. You're fighting against it because you don't want them to suffer that. You don't want them to become that stranger. You want to hold on to things that even gives you sense of sanity and sort of anchoring you. And that person, because of the condition, is slowly just deteriorating away from you. So the first rule is you have to kind of take care of you and watch out for, first of all, holding on to an ideal that no longer is valid. When you let go of that and stop insisting that they do remember, and stop insisting that they don't have this issue, then it's going to be easier for you. And so what I talk about is you kind of join them in their dance. When the dementia grabs a hold of them in that moment, they go somewhere else, and you're going to be better served to go with them. I
mm,
like to use sometimes the example of a person who may be having a seizure. Once they get into that seizure, there's not much you can do to stop it. But what you can do is prepare yourself for when they come out of it and maybe be close enough if they tend to fall to capture them, to absorb some of that. The same when someone is in the throes of the dementia, as they reminisce, I learned go with them. I learned a lot about my mother's childhood when she was going back in the day and opened up because she thought she was actually there.
mm.
I learned her traits and her sense of friendship to where she would change and put on what we call her church clothes. But that was a sign she thought someone had passed and she had to go to their funeral or go visit them in the hospital. She's about to walk out the door. So it's just things about them that's embedded in there, but it's not present right in that moment. You have to remember they are going through this and they
Mm.
are frightened just like you are. And if you can do it like that, then you're assisting them through that moment instead of making it about you and what you want and what you don't want for them. That's what I found probably most helpful for me and my mother is to say, okay, so that's where we are right now. And as dementia gets worse, the durations for the demented moments gets longer. And then towards the final stages, um, it gets easier, honestly,
Mm.
because they forget what they were arguing about. They forget about what was hurting them. They just kind of go into a peaceful place and stay there a lot longer, a whole lot longer.
Wow.
And if you and again, this is why I put it in the book. If you start to see it, I tried to couch it, frame it in a table to say they're going to go from that senior, that functional, independent acting person back down to the infant, to where you're almost holding their head and feeding them. So if you can see them transitioning backwards and adjust your support of them, that dance gets a little easier. We talked about how do you bring yourself to change an adult's diaper or bathe them? How you bring yourself to almost admonishing them because they're acting like a child, but you gotta respect that they're not a child. So
Mm.
their dignity is what you're balancing your frustrations on, and all those things are hitting you until it just sinks in. I'm now dealing with someone who's a teenager. I'm dealing with a 3-year-old who's rebelling and doesn't know what they're doing. They just want to do this. I'm dealing with an infant who needs to be held, who needs to be reassured. Those are some of the things that I wish people would at least get the book and read so that
Mm.
they can gear their own thinking as they approach those parts of the journey.
Marilyn says, good afternoon, gentlemen. Very important topic. Um, I'm the youngest of four and took care of my mom when she was sick. Siblings were too busy.
Yes.
I'm at peace knowing I took care of her. The others carry the guilt because she's gone. And I was
Yeah.
in New York with Marilyn when she was going through this phase, and it's tough, and and that's the thing with your siblings, or for those who didn't do it. It's almost like if only they understood how important it is, because that's the thing. Having lost the elders, that's the
Hmm.
piece I think that you can rest assured that you did everything you could do, or at least you tried. And I think that's when people have issues with family members moving on. Most of the
Hmm.
time, I notice it's that guilt, or it's that feeling that maybe I did not. It's almost like but you have to forgive yourself. You have to forgive yourself.
Yes.
And so, Reginald, I want to circle back because we talked about this off there too. And man, I'm the moment. So I took care of my mother-in-law, like you said, mother-in-law, basically like a baby. I had to, from a bathing standpoint. I took care of my father-in-law, and though it was weird, like those that wasn't as bad. But my
Hmm.
mother, Reginald, my mother, I never forget it. I was in New York, and mom had to, like you said, I had to clean her up like a baby, and it just really freaked me out. And I
Hmm.
was trying to figure out why, I've been doing this for other people, but why my mom? But I guess it was that's the relationship piece. So
Yes.
Reginald, what is and we talked about this out, I guess, especially with men, because for whatever reason, women, they do it more often, they're more comfortable. Um, Reginald, how do you attack it, or what's the advice for guys who you're in that position? It has to be done. How do you couch it? How do you deal with it?
First thing we deal with is our own self image, our ego. I'm a man, and what we've been taught that means. Uh, the second is that you have a strength in you that you haven't tapped into. If you're trying to be helpful to your loved one, and this is the help they need, then you gird yourself and focus on this is the help they need. As they would say in today's vernacular, get over yourself. Okay, you can still lift your hands, you can cook, you can clean, and that's what's needed in that moment. So go and be the man in that capacity, if you will. Be that strong person, if you will. My mother kind of helped me when she would pat me on my head as though I was still little, but she would say, thank you. And it was
Mm.
a thank you of gratitude that made it easier for me because I'm embarrassed to see her in that state, let alone to touch her. And she knows it. And I think she has some embarrassment. And it was like, hey, we're going to get through this together because I know you don't like being like this. So this is me talking to that adult saying, I understand this isn't necessarily comfortable for either one of us. But what I used to say to my mother, because I felt it, you can count on me. Okay. You can count on me. I got you. This is hard for both of us, but I got you. So being a male, if I can honor that I got you, then I feel a whole lot better. The other piece, especially with the young lady, even though my caregiving of my mother's gone, you carry around some residual with you. And one of the questions while you're doing this and after is, did I do the right thing? And I used to ask myself, did I cause harm? Did I forget something? Oh
Mm.
man, she's gonna suck. When I was trying to leave in the first stages, my mother refused to close the door until I pulled off. But I'm afraid she's gonna walk out that door. So, we're sitting there playing this little game, and I go around the corner and get out the car and peek around the buildings to see if she stayed. It's just there were times where I'm thinking, did I leave her vulnerable? Did I do something that was wrong? So even after the fact, and I'm learning things that I didn't know then, I have to be careful not to beat myself up. I honestly know that I did the best that I could with what I understood. I was seeking it from professionals. They said, we can't give you all the answers. It's
Mm.
unique for each person. You're in discovery mode, but you're doing the job better than most because you're trying to be a student of it. And see, for me, as a male and as a professional, this was happening on my watch and I got to get it right. So that's me in my own sense of integrity and image. I got to get this right. And once I realized dementia says, I don't care what your degrees are, how many initials you have, or how much money you have. Okay. You will bow before me until you respect me.
Wow.
Once I learned that and start paying attention to what was going on and then in that moment adjusting, Then I said, this is how an adult, a professional, a male would handle something. You got a problem, I'm going to solve it. I'm not going to, I didn't think solving was giving you a hug and everything, but boy, she had some sweet hugs. It was just coming up with, here's one example of a solution. Went to see my mother one day. All the mirrors were either taken down or covered up.
Mm.
And I couldn't, again, I don't have a background for this. So I asked her, what happened to the mirrors? And she says, there's somebody in those mirrors. I don't know who that is, but she needs to get out my house. Well, then I realized after reading, she had gotten to a point she didn't recognize herself. Two things. Went and got a 3x5 card, printed her picture on it, on half of it, and put on the other side, this is Gloria's house. Or Gloria likes this place. This is Gloria's bedroom. This is where Gloria sleeps. And so then it was just a matter of reorientating her to, you're Gloria. So even though she didn't recognize herself, she was reading something to hopefully put her back,
Mm.
because she was about to leave out that house because she thought there was another person in there and she didn't recognize her home. That's the kind of things that I'm talking about. You have to draw on your wits sometime, not your degrees. You just got to pay attention what's there and then come up with a simplistic answer.
That's great stuff, Reginald. I'm getting emotional just thinking about it, but
Oh man,
we're
don't do
talking
that. Don't do that.
we're talking with author Reginald Lawson at home with dementia, insightful caregiver strategies for smarter decisions, safer outcomes, and improved sanity. Also, Reginald, something that I want you to talk about is because again, off the air, you said how your mom was always super prideful on her appearance, and the certain like you said, she's a strong woman, and I just thought about my grandmother because you see this person who, like you said, would not leave the house without blank, who prided herself, Granny prided herself on wearing them high heels and
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and you just saw it just kind of slowly just go down the drain. Also, a personality comes
Yes.
about that you don't even know who it is. Reginald,
Yes.
talk about that, letting people understand that that's not really them. Like you know what I mean? Like so almost like there was almost like I don't say arrogance, but there was a piece of her that was not like her,
Right.
almost like another personality. But I
Correct.
think you have to, Reginald, help talk to us about that when dealing with our relatives who have dementia, understanding that don't get caught up in that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get your feelings hurt. Understand that that's not really them.
Okay. I would tell people when they were going to meet my mother. That's I warned them. I said, "Look, my mother, she she has this tough, mean exterior, but she's got the heart of a lamb. Okay, just don't mess with her kids and don't mess with her. So she bites you real quick. And so when the physicians were telling me there's something about dementia that will cause your loved one to become bitter,
Mm.
rigid, mean. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, she's already that. She's gonna get worse. So it was by degrees that she actually did. It seemed her temper got shorter, and so for me, her bite got harder, and I realized this was the dementia. This is what they warned me about. It didn't last long, but being the recipient of it a few times until I learned how to duck, oh, it's no fun. And I mean, it's no fun. She was she was prideful and took pride in her appearance. She worked at Chrysler assembly plant, and my mother would iron her 10 to 15 pairs of jeans to put a crease in them so sharp like a military crease. This is how
Mm.
this lady stepped out, even in her work clothes. She always had her hair done. It got to the point with dementia. We kind of, my cousins would say, "How's your mother today?" And I says, she's in her Donna King moment. If you think of Don King, the promoter, with his hair all over the place, sticking up straight there, my mother was comfortable with her hair that way. I had to quickly stop saying to her, "When you're going to do your hair," because she said, "What's wrong with my hair?" To, "Oh, you're looking like Donna King today. You're looking cute in that little thing." So once I adjusted, but then I realized the dementia took away her frustrations about her appearance. So that was the blessing inside of that. She was no longer stressed about, I can't figure out how to roll my hair and do my hair. So when you start to see it through that lens, you see the blessings inside of that. That's what dementia had done for her. I'll give your listeners this one story. I went up to take her to a doctor's appointment, and I would call her the day before because her memory was really going in and out. And I would call her an hour before. So I'm in a 2 hour drive and I call, hey, I'm going to see you in an hour. Good looking. Are you going to be ready? Yeah, I'm going to be ready. So I get there, go through the door. There's my mother, dressed as she wants to be, except for her bra is on the outside of her blouse. And I'm like, okay, now what are you going to do? Because we ain't going out like that. Right? So, but that was me. That was me, right? I couldn't go out with my mother like that thinking what people think of me. So I asked her, do you want to change your bra? She said, what's wrong with it? Well, you usually wear it on the inside. And today you got it on the outside. And she said, so what? I said, and I'm not going to touch it, but let's go without that. So she reaches back, takes it off, throws it on the floor in a huff, and goes out to the car. All right, fine. We're driving. We get to the doctor's, and here my mother and I are walking up to the doctor. Her ladies are doing what they do, and we go in, and the doctor looks at me and looks at her, and she said, "How's it going?" I said, "We're having one of those days. She's winning. I'm losing." It's things like that that my mother would never. So I
Right.
know that's what dementia was doing to her, and my key was to not rob her of her dignity, even in her demented state. So just tell her, hey, that's good. We're going to go with it. Act like it's okay. That's what you got to do. You just, it's easier for you when you just roll with it. But seeing that brazier, and people looking at me like, you brought this one. I had to hold my head up many a time instead of down. Man. I just had to. But that's how I dealt with that.
Reginald Lawson, the book is At Home with Dementia, Insightful Caregiver Strategies for Smarter Decisions, Safer Outcomes, and Improved Sanity. Available on Amazon and I guess wherever you get books, right, Reginald?
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and so, Reginald, as we wrap things up, you are basically, tell us about your organization. I know it's growing, and you're kind of like you're building it, but maybe
Mm-hmm.
give us some information so for people who are dealing with caregiving, especially guys out there.
Um, what we're doing is we're building a contingency to help people who are being those caregivers with their loved ones at home. The title of the book has two flavors to it, if you will. It's At Home with Dementia because I made a promise to my mother to keep her at home, but it is also being at home or being at peace
Mm.
with dementia. So that's how it's meant. So part of what I'll do, we come out and sort of do a site or a home survey to say, because in the book it talks about how I was utilizing technology to learn more about what was going on, using cameras and sensors and things throughout the home to know where my mother was, how she was. So one of the things that we do is we come to the home and we do an assessment to say, here's the technology you might want to consider. Here's where you might want to place sensors and cameras. And it can get intricate, depends on your needs, because we had an automatic shut off for the stove because my mother kept leaving the stove on and walking away and forgetting about it. So things like that, we'll talk about how you can build or layer a system based on their needs if you're trying to keep them in the home. So that's one of the things. The other is that coming out and speaking to groups, and I've been to a few nursing homes, if you will, that while their loved ones are there in their session, we're speaking to the caregivers as a group. So coming out and speaking to them and responding to some of their questions and helping them to understand you're not crazy, you're not alone. But it also helps enrich me with different kind of issues that they're dealing with, so I can help some folks. So we go from anywhere from the consulting to set it up in your home to speaking engagements. There are books signing. I think the last one we did before COVID hit was with the Links in Prince George's County. Just talked to the Deltas about a virtual conference that they'll be having sometime in the spring, things like that. So it also, I'll come and talk to your group or help whomever. Um, and the last piece is the book, trying to get it into our communities. I'm really passionate about that, finding outlet and sources, ways to help us because us as a people and us as males, sometimes we don't ask for help.
Mm.
Sometimes we ask and don't know where to go. And sometimes we go and we get deceived or distracted. And I want to take, again, as a servant, I want to take my experience and turn it into a positive for our people. So that's what the organization is trying to do.
Well, Reginald, it's been a joy. You brought back so much memories, but also just such clarity. And it's hard to find. So, we will use you as a treasure. Again, are you on social media? Can people reach you online?
Okay, now you gotta ask my kids. But I'm on Facebook, I'm on
There we go.
LinkedIn. So I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn, and right now that's where I'm at. They'll get me out somewhere on Twitter or wherever else I need
Yeah,
to
just
be.
Google Reginald A.
Yes,
Lawson. It
you'll
comes up.
find me.
I
Yes.
Googled you. Hey man, have a great day, Reginald. Thanks for what you're doing. Keep up the great work and make sure just let me know what's going on because I want to definitely shine the light on what you're doing. Okay,
I want you to join us December the 12th.
there we go.
Virtual session that we call a gathering of caregiving men. And I'll send you the link and everything. It's called a gathering of caregiving men where we sit down and we talk about the realities of it at a layman's language, I might say, not at a clinical level, whatever. But join us on December the 12th. That's a Saturday, 10 o'clock in the morning. We'll be right there waiting for you.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. Reginald, when you're telling that broad story, Marilyn said, "God bless you for caregivers. They're proud." Also, I thought it
Thank you,
was
Marilyn.
funny. She said we have the same mamas. I thought that was funny. She said that. She said
Then
what?
you're blessed.
That's all right, man. So take care, Reginald. Have a great one, buddy. Again, that's Reginald Lawson joining us, and thank you for tuning in. Marc's Noon Show right here on Facebook. Be good. Peace.